Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are immersing ourselves in the life, the art, and the absolutely furious independence of one of modern music's most electrifying figures.
And confounding figures, really.
Absolutely. We're talking about Prince Rogers Nelson.
It's a huge, multifaceted life to cover. Born in 1958, he was truly the definition of a multi-hyphenate artist.
I mean, the sources just list it all out, don't they?
They do. Singer, songwriter, musician, dancer, actor. He wasn't just part of a scene, you know. He essentially engineered the signature sound of an entire city.
The Minneapolis sound.
The Minneapolis sound, exactly. And his influence, it still radiates across R&B, funk, rock, pop, soul, and even neo-psychedelia. It's just everywhere.
Before we go any further, for anyone listening who might know the result but not the ingredients of that sound, what exactly is the Minneapolis sound that he pioneered?
That's a crucial question. The Minneapolis sound is, it's essentially a perfect synthesis.
A fusion.
A fusion, yeah. It takes the syncopated, driving rhythms of funk and soul, you know, think James Brown or Sly Stone, but it strips away the traditional horns.
Okay.
And it replaces them with the cold, atmospheric textures of new wave synthesizers and drum machines.
So very 80s, in a way.
Very, but then he layered on this aggressive, shredding rock guitar. So what you get is this tight, synthesized, danceable funk rock, all done under one brilliant roof.
That range alone is just breathtaking. But what makes this particular deep dive so poignant is the suddenness and the tragic details of the ending.
Right.
You have this towering figure who seemed almost invincible, yet at just 57 years old in April 2016, Prince died at his home and studio, Paisley Park.
And the sources detail the specifics with heartbreaking clarity. His death was ruled an accidental overdose of fentanyl.
Which is just terrifyingly potent.
Incredibly. And tragically, the synthetic opioid was laced into counterfeit hydrocodone paracetamol pills.
So he didn't even know what he was taking.
It seems not. It's a scenario we've seen tragically repeated, where illicit drugs are contaminated with dangerous substances the user just doesn't expect.
And what the subsequent investigation revealed is the difficult reality that he was, at the time of his death, struggling.
He was. Struggling with an addiction to opioids.
Reportedly driven by chronic pain from years of intensely physical stage performances, right?
Exactly. I mean, all those years of jumping off pianos and heels, it takes a toll. And that a figure so seemingly controlled, so superhuman.
So in command of every single detail.
Exactly. That he was battling this very human, hidden vulnerability. That's the core paradox we have to explore today.
It absolutely is. And that vulnerability is set against a career defined by, well, almost unbelievable triumph. If we look for the defining achievement, we have to go back to 1984. That year, Prince became the first singer in U.S. history to simultaneously hold the #1 spot for a film, an album, and a single.
At the same time, it's just staggering to think about.
That is an analog-era power move that, today's biggest stars would struggle to replicate. We are talking about the film Purple Rain.
Of course.
The iconic soundtrack album of the same name, and the single When Doves Cry.
And that album didn't just top the charts, it spent 6 consecutive months atop the Billboard 200 chart.
This month.
It wasn't just a cultural moment, it was a total commercial and critical takeover. He defined the look, the sound, and the narrative of the mid-'80s.
So our mission today is to explore this entire trajectory. We're looking at the paradoxes of control. The visionary artist who defied genre.
The business rebel who waged war against the music machine.
And the fiercely private individual whose work ethic yielded a legendary vault of music that continues to shape culture today.
His global record sales stand at over 100 million. He's an enduring icon.
Let's get into the very origins of that unstoppable creative force.
We begin, as always, at the beginning. Minneapolis, Minnesota. He was born on June 7, 1958.
And we know from the source material that music was literally in his DNA.
It really was. His parents were both musicians. His mother, Mattie Della, was a jazz singer, and his father, John Lewis Nelson, was a pianist and songwriter.
And his name, Prince Rogers Nelson, was an homage, wasn't it? A direct inheritance of his father's professional identity.
That's right. John Lewis Nelson used Prince Rogers as his stage name when performing with Mattie in their jazz group, the Prince Rogers Trio.
It's fascinating that while he carried that weighty, almost monarchical name as a child, The sources say he preferred a much simpler moniker.
Skipper.
Skipper, I love that.
His father was incredibly ambitious for him. He explicitly told A Current Affair in 1991 that he named his son Prince because he wanted him to do everything I wanted to do.
Wow. Imagine being born with that kind of professional expectation built right into your identity.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yet, the childhood wasn't always a smooth path towards superstardom. The sources contain a fascinating detail about his early health. Prince famously stated later in life that he was born epileptic and suffered seizures when he was young.
He described a childhood affliction that caused significant distress. But what's fascinating is how he related the recovery.
He had a spiritual explanation for it.
He did. He believed he overcame this through a spiritual realization, recounting a story where an angel told his mother he wouldn't be sick anymore.
And this early belief in a spiritual intervention, it really foreshadows his later, very public journey into faith, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And how he integrated the sacred into his life and his art.
He and his younger sister, Tyka Nelson, born in 1960, both had their musical interests actively encouraged by their father. But the home life was volatile.
Very. His parents divorced when he was 10, and after moving back and forth between them, the sources indicate a moment of profound personal crisis.
His father threw him out of the house.
He did. And that kind of trauma could derail a young person entirely, but for Prince, it propelled him.
How so?
This chaotic period led him to find refuge in the home of the Anderson family, neighbors who took him in. And this move proved absolutely pivotal.
Because that's where he met André Simon.
Exactly. It cemented his friendship with their son, André Simon, who became his earliest significant collaborator. It really highlights how these foundational, difficult moments fueled his career.
He found stability and, critically, a musical partner when he needed them most.
Precisely.
What I find truly incredible about his early life is the sheer breadth of his physical and artistic training. Before he was the icon, he was a polymath in training.
He was managing these dual lives that sound contradictory on paper.
You know, he played football, basketball, and baseball at Central High School. He was an athlete. Pretty good one, too.
But juxtaposed against that high-impact team sports environment, he was simultaneously receiving classical ballet training.
Right, at the Minnesota Dance Theater.
Through the Urban Arts program.
Yeah.
And that physical duality, it perfectly explains his revolutionary stage presence.
It does. The athletic rigor gave him stamina, and the classical ballet discipline gave him precision, fluidity, and that incredible, almost genderless grace.
He was a rock star, a funk master, and a professional dancer all at once.
And that dedication to dance wasn't just for his own performance, was it? The sources note he later used his immense personal wealth to save the struggling Joffrey Ballet in Chicago.
He did in the 1990s. He became a quiet, powerful advocate for the art form that had shaped him. This wasn't just a phase, it was a lifelong commitment to the arts.
Speaking of his childhood, one of the most remarkable discoveries of recent years was made completely by accident in Come 22.
I love this story.
A news station, WCCO-TV, was researching an old Minneapolis teacher strike from April 1970, and they accidentally uncovered this footage.
Of an interview they had conducted with an 11-year-old local boy.
And it was Prince.
It was him. He's standing there, so articulate and clearly confident, talking about the strike.
What are you saying?
He said he thought the teachers should get a better education and more money because, and this is a direct quote, they'd be working extra hours for us.
Amazing. And he didn't identify himself, but it was confirmed later by a historian and a former classmate.
It's an absolute rarity, one of the very few known video clips of him from his youth, capturing that nascent confidence long before he was famous.
All that raw talent and work ethic finally culminated in the industry noticing. The accounts detail his earliest recording efforts, first with a producer named Chris Moon.
Right, creating a demo tape. But when that failed to land a contract, Moon brought the tape to a Minneapolis businessman, Owen Husney.
And Husney immediately saw the star potential. He signed the 19-year-old to a management contract and created a professional demo that got interest from major labels.
A&M, Columbia, and most importantly, Warner Bros. Records.
And the resulting 1977 deal with Warner Bros. Was, for a newcomer, groundbreaking.
This is where the seeds of his later contractual warfare were planted, but in a very positive way initially.
How so?
The deal explicitly granted Prince creative control for his first 3 albums, and, crucially, he retained his publishing rights.
For an 18-year-old with 0 track record, that's unheard of.
It's practically unheard of in the 1970s record industry. It speaks volumes about his profound self-belief and his non-negotiable insistence on controlling his entire creative universe.
And that was evident from day one. When his debut album, For You, arrived in 1978, the album notes were just a statement of intent.
They listed him as writing, producing, arranging, composing, and playing all 27 instruments on the recording.
All of them, with the sole exception of lyrics co-written on one track.
And if you listen to For You, it sounds expansive and technically flawless. It established him immediately as a self-contained, total creative unit.
The only financial drawback, the sources report, was that the cost of recording this multi-instrumental masterpiece was twice his initial advance.
But he proved he was worth every penny.
So by 1980, with his third album, Dirty Mind, Prince had officially stepped out of the shadows and straight into cultural confrontation.
Oh, this was a radical departure from the smooth R&B of his first two records.
The critical reception for Dirty Mind was ecstatic, wasn't it?
It was. They called it a stunning, audacious amalgam of funk, new wave, R&B, and pop. But the audacious part really came from the lyrical content.
The shock zone.
The shock value. Critics noted this album was fueled by grinningly salacious sex and the desire to shock.
Tracks like Sister, an explicit exploration of incest, and Head, about oral sex, they introduced his provocative side.
It was sexually franked and musically lean, often using simple drum machine beats and raw guitar.
And this provocation wasn't limited to the studio recordings. He was actively courting controversy, sometimes in very harsh public settings.
Right. The most famous early conflict involved him opening for the Rolling Stones in October 1981.
At the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. So let's zoom in on that moment. The audience is there for the Stones, the ultimate rock behemoths. What did Prince look like?
He took the stage, this ultimate new wave funk alien wearing only a trench coat and black bikini briefs underneath, sometimes described as Speedos.
That's a bold choice for a Stones crowd.
It was a massive cultural clash. The rock crowd, expecting a traditional opening act, did not appreciate the look or the sound.
And the reaction was not good.
Not good at all. Accounts say they literally forced him off the stage after just 3 songs by throwing trash, bottles, and even a dead chicken at him.
A dead chicken. That moment is legendary because it so perfectly captured his us against the world mentality. He wasn't afraid to defy every expectation.
He even started defying linguistic conventions around this time.
Right. Starting with the 1981 album Controversy, we saw the introduction of his distinctive abbreviated spelling.
Writing you as you, two as two, and four as four, it would become a signature element of his identity. Part artistic flair, part control, part marketing.
And the Controversy album established another Prince practice, publishing his songs under his own company, Controversy Music.
An early move toward building the business control he always sought.
Meanwhile, he was secretly masterminding other projects, operating as a Svengali behind the scenes.
Right. The sources remind us of his side project band, The Time, which he formed in 1981 as a mirror to his own sound.
Designed to showcase his protégés. He was a ghost writer and ghost performer for them, wasn't he?
Absolutely. The Time released 4 albums between 81 and 1990, but Prince wrote and performed most of the instrumentation and backing vocals himself.
Under pseudonyms.
Often masking his involvement under names like Jamie Starr or The Starr Company, leaving lead vocals to Morris Day.
It speaks to his boundless prolific energy, but also his desire to shape the entire burgeoning Minneapolis scene.
Creating an empire under different names.
Then came the seismic shift of 1982 with the double album 1999. This wasn't just a hit, it was a phenomenon.
It was. It sold over 4 million copies at the time. The title track was a commentary on nuclear proliferation, but the album's real cultural shockwave came from a single.
Little Red Corvette.
And this is a monumental moment in music television history. The sources stress its importance in breaking racial barriers.
Because Little Red Corvette, along with Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, were the first 2 videos by black artists to be played in heavy rotation on MTV.
We have to remember the context here. Before this point, MTV was widely perceived as resisting black music.
So what finally forced the change?
Pressure. Pure pressure. The change only came after CBS Records president Walter Yetnikoff reportedly threatened to pull all CBS videos from the network.
Unless they played Jackson's and Prince's work heavily.
Exactly. The success of 1999 was so undeniable, and the pressure from the label was so intense that MTV's hands were forced.
It broke a major color barrier in visual media.
Paved the way for every non-white artist who followed on the channel.
Following the 1999 tour, the configuration of his backing band formalized, becoming known as The Revolution.
And the name was a little Easter egg on the album cover itself, wasn't it?
It was. The word revolution was printed in reverse on the cover, inside the letter I of the word Prince.
And the lineup had a critical shift that was vital to their defining sound. Guitarist Des Dickerson left.
Right, reportedly due to reluctance to sign a long contract, and notably for religious reasons.
And that opened the door for Wendy Melvoin.
A friend of keyboardist Lisa Coleman.
Exactly. So she came in, and the lineup solidified. Lisa Holman and Dr. Fink on keyboards, Bobby Z on drums, and Brown Mark on bass.
This lineup, known for its multiracial and multigender composition, became the tight unit that would define the sound of his imperial phase.
Giving his music an extra layer of texture, nuance, and vocal harmonies.
And that phase, of course, culminated in 1984 with the film and album Purple Rain. This wasn't just success, this was total multimedia cultural saturation.
According to his former manager, Bob Cavallo, securing a deal for Prince to star in a major motion picture was a non-negotiable requirement.
Even when his fame was relatively limited.
Right. Purple Rain, which was loosely autobiographical, gave him that vehicle. The album was one of the decade's biggest sellers, moving over 13 million copies in the U.S.
And spending 24 consecutive weeks at #1.
And the film was huge, grossing more than $68 million in the U.S., which translates to over $206 million in today's money.
Plus, he won the Academy Award for Best Original Song Score. To underscore the cultural clout, the album itself is ranked 8th on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time.
It was a cultural monolith, it truly was. And 1984 was also the year Andy Warhol created his famous 12 unique silkscreen paintings of Prince.
Capturing him, as Vanity Fair put it, at the height of his powers. He had completely cemented his image as an artistic and visual icon who transcended music alone.
But the enormous success of Purple Rain gave Prince incredible cultural currency, and it simultaneously propelled him into direct confrontation.
Not just with rock crowds, but with the moral establishment of the United States.
That confrontation can be traced back to one specific track on the Purple Rain album, Darling Nikki.
With its notorious sexual lyrics and reference to masturbation, the sources detail how this song directly led to the formation of one of the most powerful censorship groups in music history.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Tipper Gore, the wife of then-Senator Al Gore, was listening to the album with her 11-year-old daughter.
And when she heard the explicit lyrics of Darling Nikki, she was so alarmed that she co-founded the Parents Music Resource Center, or the PMRC, in 1985.
The PMRC's advocacy led directly to the famous Senate hearings and the voluntary adoption of the parental advisory warning label by the recording industry.
It is extraordinary to think that one song, created by an artist obsessed with control, actually resulted in a massive, lasting change to global music packaging standards.
A label that Prince himself would spend years having affixed to his own work.
Despite the controversy, the output didn't slow down, but we start seeing a pattern of artistic experimentation contrasting sharply with commercial results.
Right. In 1986, the album Parade was a platinum success, featuring the #1 single, Kiss.
But its accompanying film, Under the Cherry Moon, which Prince directed and starred in, was a spectacular critical disaster.
The sources confirm the film received a Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Picture, tying with Howard the Duck.
And Prince himself earned Razzies for Worst Director and Worst Actor. He was the most brilliant musician in the world, but not always the best filmmaker.
No. I wonder if that stumble, both creatively and publicly, led to the next major decisive move.
The dissolution of the revolution.
Following the 1986 Parade tour, he fired Wendy Melvoin and Lisa Coleman, the core musical partners of his biggest era.
The sources confirm that only keyboardist Dr. Fink remained. It was a radical, clean slate.
Suggesting he felt creatively constrained by the band's configuration or history.
And this internal change directly preceded one of his greatest artistic struggles, the triple album fight over what would become Sign of the Times.
Right. Before the Revolution split, he was working on 2 distinct projects, a band album called Dream Factory and a solo album named Camille.
He consolidated that mountain of material, intending to release a massive 3-LP set titled Crystal Ball.
But here's where the record company started to push back aggressively. Warner Bros. Deemed the triple album too commercially risky.
And they forced him to trim it down to the double album Sign of the Times, which was released in 1987.
Critics universally lauded Sign of the Times as potentially the greatest work of his career, a sprawling masterpiece.
But despite that critical success, it highlights the constant tension between his prolific creative vision and the commercial constraints of his label.
We should also recall the specifics of the shelved Camille project. That work introduced a new androgynous persona.
One who sang primarily in a sped-up, androgynous female-sounding voice.
Achieved by pitching up his already high natural vocal range, it was another sonic boundary shattered, even if the label refused to release the full vision.
Then came the truly bizarre case of the Black Album. After wrapping up Sign of the Times, Prince recorded this instrumental, raw funk and R&B themed album. 500,000 copies were pressed in 1987.
But the sources confirm that Prince experienced a sudden, dramatic spiritual epiphany and decided the album was evil.
He famously had the entire pressing recalled and destroyed,
Costing the label millions.
That is an extraordinary, unprecedented act of self-censorship rooted in a sudden shift in spiritual conviction.
To have 500,000 copies destroyed, that action immediately elevated the few surviving vinyl copies into legendary, highly valuable collector items.
The album was eventually given a limited official release 7 years later in 1994, but the 1987 recall remains a key anecdote about his internal struggles.
And this era is entirely defined by his escalating conflict with Warner Bros. The underlying issue, as the sources clearly state, was Prince's intense frustration over the label refusing to release his enormous backlog of music.
They weren't releasing it at the pace he desired, hindering both his artistic flow and his ability to control his financial destiny.
The problem was one of supply and demand. He was supplying material so fast the label couldn't or wouldn't process it quickly enough for the market.
This contractual warfare culminated in 1993 with one of the most famous acts of artistic protest in music history.
He changed his stage name
to the unpronounceable symbol, known to fans as the love symbol #2.
His reasoning was clear. He felt his own name, Prince, belonged to the company due to the contract. This drastic act was his way of emancipating himself,
making his identity unmarketable by his corporate masters. The logistics of this were a nightmare, weren't they?
A total nightmare. Think about it. To use the symbol in print media magazines, album covers Warner Bros. Was forced to organize a mass mailing of floppy disks containing a custom font.
A floppy disk. That story truly captures the absurdity. But functionally, wasn't this protest an absolute commercial disaster for him in the short term?
It was, but he justified it because the principle was paramount. He was willing to sacrifice immediate commercial viability to reclaim his identity.
And he coupled this identity shift with a profound public display of grievance.
Appearing with the word slave written starkly on his face during public appearances, calling his situation a form of slavery because they owned his master recordings.
This was a direct, visual, and highly provocative challenge to the entire recording industry model.
And his strategy to finally escape the contract was simply brute force prolificacy. He realized the deal required a certain number of albums, so he just cranked them out
as fast as possible.
Yeah.
This led to rapid-fire releases, including Come, the official release of the Black Album in 1994, The Gold Experience, and Chaos and Disorder.
By delivering the required number of albums quickly, regardless of the label's marketing cycle, he ultimately forced his freedom.
And he finally severed ties with Warner Bros. In 1996, completing his contract and closing one of the most tumultuous periods of his career.
He was finally free.
And 1996 was the year of his emancipation, so he titled his first major post-Warner Bros. Release exactly that, Emancipation.
It was monumental. A 36-song, 3-CD set with each disc running exactly 60 minutes. A massive statement of artistic pent-up demand.
Released on his own MPG Records label, it was a declaration of freedom. Crucially, this was the first Prince album to feature covers of other artists' songs.
Exactly. The sources detail he tackled Joan Osborne's massive hit One of Us, the Stylistics' Betcha by Golly Wow, and Bonnie Raitt's I Can't Make You Love Me.
After years of demanding that his music be released, he was now exercising his new freedom to interpret the work of others.
It was certified platinum and established his independent model.
But the journey of independence led him to a place that created another significant paradox: the digital world. Prince was, in many ways, an absolute digital pioneer.
Yet he later became one of the internet's most aggressive opponents.
A total contradiction.
It is. He embraced the internet early for direct fan connection and distribution. He released the collection Crystal Ball exclusively online in 1998, pioneering the direct-to-consumer model.
And he later founded npgmusicclub.com, maintaining a direct line with his most dedicated followers.
This early digital savvy earned him the prestigious 2006 Webby Lifetime Achievement Award. He understood the power of cutting out the middleman before almost anyone else.
So why the dramatic 180-degree turn? By 2010, he declared, The internet is completely over.
He clarified that stance, saying the internet was over for anyone who wants to get paid, questioning which musician had gotten rich off digital sales.
So it wasn't the technology, it was the business model.
Precisely. It was the idea that content should be free or near free. This aggressive stance against perceived theft defined his later career, leading to numerous copyright battles.
But before those legal battles intensified, the early 2000s saw a massive public resurgence, proving that his artistic force was undiminished.
This resurgence began in earnest around 2004. He delivered several unforgettable career highlights that year.
Leading with the 46th Annual Grammy Awards, he opened the show with Beyoncé.
Performing a medley that merged Purple Rain, Let's Go Crazy, and Beyoncé's Crazy in Love, that performance was a definitive moment.
Pairing the old master with the new queen of pop.
And that same month, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But the acceptance wasn't the biggest highlight. It was his performance later that night that lives in internet infamy.
This is where we get one of his most iconic recent images. He joined in the tribute to fellow inductee George Harrison.
Performing Harrison's While My Guitar Gently Weeps, Prince launched into a blistering, unforgettable 2-minute guitar solo that just stole the show.
I remember that solo. It was ferocious, technically perfect, and yet deeply emotional. He walks out, takes the spotlight, unleashes this torrent of virtuosic playing.
And then he just throws his guitar high into the air.
And walks off stage, never looking back to see it land. That move, that sheer confidence, solidified his genius for a new generation.
And this return to prominence was coupled with revolutionary marketing strategies. His 2004 album, Musicology, had chart success that was significantly boosted by what we now call bundling.
Okay, let's analyze this strategy. The CDs were included as part of the concert ticket purchase. Why was this so revolutionary?
It was revolutionary because it exploited a loophole in chart rules. Under the Billboard 200 rules at the time, this qualified each bundled CD sale to count toward his U.S. chart placement.
So since the Musicology tour was massive, selling millions of tickets, this strategy immediately inflated his album sale numbers.
And propelled him back up the charts. It shows that even after fighting the machine, he was still keenly interested in understanding and manipulating the commercial systems.
Absolutely. The strategy was so effective that Rolling Stone named Prince the highest-earning musician in the world in 2004.
With an estimated annual income of $56.5 million, primarily due to the massive tour receipts combined with those chart-boosting sales.
This focus on direct revenue and fan connection continued into his massive global residencies. In 2007, he embarked on the Earth Tour in London.
21 shows at the O2 Arena. This was another major economic experiment. Despite the massive demand, tickets were capped by Prince at a remarkably specific price.
£31.21. Very fan-friendly.
It was. But the generosity came with controversy. To promote his new album, Planet Earth, he made a deal with the Mail on Sunday newspaper to give the album away for free.
And that sparked immediate outrage among music distributors and retailers.
It did. Sony BMG, his UK distributor, actually pulled out of distributing the album in UK stores entirely. He was willing to completely disrupt traditional sales channels.
This same impulse for control led to his famously aggressive stance on digital copyright and fan content.
He aggressively pursued lawsuits against platforms like YouTube and eBay in 2007, employing the company Web Sheriff to police the internet relentlessly.
And this level of control extended to every image and piece of fan-created content. It even led to the formation of Prince Fans United,
a movement created to fight what they saw as legal actions, attempting to stifle all critical commentary, photos, and use of his likeness.
The sources detail a legal fight over a home video featuring Let's Go Crazy, faintly playing in the background.
It was a zero-tolerance approach.
And perhaps the most famous and most ironic example was his 2008 Coachella performance, where he covered Radiohead's song Creep.
He immediately forced YouTube to remove the fan footage.
And the irony is rich because Radiohead, the original copyright holders, publicly requested that Prince allow the video to stay up.
They said, "It's our song, let people hear it." But Prince initially refused, only posting the footage to his own official website later.
He was willing to challenge even the original copyright holders in a desperate attempt to maintain his personal image and performance control.
Stepping back from the music and business, we have to look at the man himself. Prince was incredibly complicated.
Often integrating his evolving spiritual journey and personal philosophy directly into his art, sometimes in ways that seemed contradictory.
His spiritual life was deeply rooted from childhood. He was raised in the Seventh-day Adventist church, and themes of God and Jesus were present even in his early, most explicit work.
Right, tracks like I Would Die For You, where sexuality and spirituality are profoundly intertwined. There's even a complete recitation of the Lord's Prayer hidden in the full-length version of Controversy.
And a backward message about the Lord coming soon in Darling Nikki.
That tension, the sacred and the profane battling it out, defined his early work. But the major public shift came in 2001.
When he converted to become a Jehovah's Witness, heavily influenced by his friend and bass player Larry Graham.
He described it not as a conversion, but a realization, didn't he?
He did. He compared it to the relationship between Morpheus and Neo in The Matrix. And he took that faith seriously. He attended meetings and, famously, occasionally knocked on people's doors to discuss his faith.
I can't imagine opening my door and finding Prince on my doorstep.
It must have been shocking.
Did this intense new spiritual focus affect his professional relationships?
It did. The sources indicate it caused friction with former collaborators. There are reports he declined an initial full reunion with Wendy Melvoin, in part due to her lesbian and Jewish identities.
Aligning with certain tenets of his faith at the time.
Right. However, we should note that he later reconciled and reunited with both Melvoin and Lisa Coleman for performances, suggesting his personal views continued to evolve over time.
In terms of his private life, he was married twice. First, to dancer Mayday Garcia from 1996 to 2000.
And then to Manuela Testolini, a Canadian businesswoman, from 2001 to 2007.
The sources focus particularly on the deep, private grief associated with his first marriage to Mate.
They had a son, Amir, in October 1996, who sadly died just a week after birth due to Pfeiffer syndrome, a rare genetic disorder.
And this tragedy, compounded by a subsequent miscarriage, contributed significantly to the strain that eventually led to their divorce.
It's a reminder of the profound private pain hidden behind the flamboyant public superstar.
Moving to his image, Prince was arguably defined by his androgynous style. It was a conscious artistic choice that was incredibly radical for the time.
He completely defied conventional racial and gender stereotypes. His androgynous look earned him comparisons to pioneers like Little Richard and David Bowie.
But Prince took it further. He made it his permanent identity. Commentators noted in 2016 how his evasion of conventional gender definitions speaks to us now in this trans-aware moment.
His image was ahead of its time, and crucially, the sources emphasize his consistent support and mentorship of women in music.
Maintaining a strong female presence in his backing bands throughout his career, often elevating them to key roles.
Slate noted he promised a world where men and women looked and acted like each other, using fashion and presentation to break down boundaries.
Now let's talk about his staggering musicianship. We already covered the 27 instruments on his debut album. He was a true virtuoso.
On guitar, drums, bass, and piano, his proficiency wasn't just breadth, it was depth.
His guitar skills are legendary. He was ranked the 14th greatest guitarist of all time by Rolling Stone in 2023, and his equipment reflected his flair.
He amassed a collection of 121 guitars. We have to discuss the iconic White Cloud guitars, the custom instruments famously seen in Purple Rain.
With that distinct elongated scroll-style horn.
The Cloud guitar, designed by Dave Roussan, was not easy to play. The structural challenges of that elaborate shape meant they weren't always ergonomically perfect.
But they were the perfect visual manifestation of his artistic vision. But early on, he was defined by a more modest instrument.
The Honor Mad Cat Telecaster copy.
The Mad Cat, that distinctive yellow and black striped Telecaster. Why was that particular guitar so important to his early sound?
Because it was the guitar he used extensively throughout the Dirty Mind and Controversy eras. It has a distinctive, bright yet raw tone that perfectly suited the sparse, new wave funk sound.
A relatively cheap copy of a Fender Telecaster, but in his hands, it became instantly recognizable.
Speaking of his output, it's easy to forget how many classic hits he wrote for other artists.
Sometimes using pseudonyms like Christopher or Jamie Starr to maintain separation.
The list is extraordinary. He penned Manic Monday for the Bangles, a song he originally intended for himself.
He wrote I Feel For You, which became a massive hit for Taka Khan.
And of course, Nothing Compares to You, originally written for his side project, The Family, but famously covered by Sinead O'Connor, turning it into a global standard.
Outside of music, he was engaged, though often privately, in political and social activism.
He included pointed political commentary in earlier songs like Ronnie Talked to Russia and Sign of the Times.
And toward the end of his life, his support for Black Lives Matter became much more public and visible.
He reportedly donated to the family of Trayvon Martin in 2012 and arranged for Eric Garner's family to attend one of his concerts.
His most visible action came in 2015, following the killing of Freddie Gray, where he organized the Rally for Peace concert in Baltimore.
And he released the song Baltimore, which included specific, timely lyrics commenting on the riots and the need for justice.
What's perhaps most striking about his philanthropy is how much of it was completely private.
Absolutely. The sources reveal that his charitable endeavors were largely undisclosed during his lifetime, only coming to light posthumously.
So he was actively funding organizations that nobody knew about.
Precisely. He anonymously funded projects like Yes We Code, which aimed to teach disadvantaged youth coding skills, and Green for All, focused on climate justice.
There's a particularly telling anecdote about him anonymously paying off the medical bills of legendary drummer Clyde Stubblefield.
The rhythmic engine of James Brown. When Stubblefield was undergoing cancer treatment, it shows a deep-seated commitment to helping others quietly.
Finally, his commitment extended to animal rights and his dietary ethos. He was known for adhering to a vegan or vegetarian diet.
And the sources confirm he enforced a strict dietary ethos at Paisley Park. Guests and staff were required to maintain a vegetarian or pescatarian diet while on the premises.
A rule which continues to be enforced by the estate to honor his personal ethos.
Given his lifelong battle for creative and financial control, changing his name, fighting the biggest label in the world, the immediate aftermath of his death became its own saga.
A saga defined by chaos and contradiction. The sources detail an immediate estate crisis.
The largest issue is the simple, staggering fact that he died without a will.
Which is just, knowing him and his focus on control, the ultimate irony.
It is. Under Minnesota law, this meant his 6 siblings, his full sister Tyka Nelson, and 5 half-siblings became his legal heirs.
And the sources reveal that almost immediately the process was fraught. Within 3 weeks of his death, over 700 people claimed kinship,
forcing the courts to wade through a mountain of spurious claims. The estate was only finally settled in 2022, a 6-year legal ordeal.
A unique piece of his physical legacy, now on permanent display at Paisley Park, is his urn.
His ashes were placed into a custom 3D printed urn that is shaped exactly like the Paisley Park estate itself.
Co-designed by his sister, Tyka, and her son. A stunning, highly personal architectural memorial to his home and studio.
But the real engine of the posthumous world is the vault. Given his prolific nature, the sources suggest he had a vast array of unreleased material.
Potentially enough for decades of future releases.
The vault has fueled a constant, methodical stream of posthumous projects, starting with the hits compilation Forever.
We've seen demo albums like Piano and a Microphone in 1983, and completely shelved works like the album Welcome to America.
And the estate is meticulously managing these reissues, issuing massive super deluxe versions of his classic albums like Sign of the Times and Diamonds and Pearls.
This is legacy preservation at a colossal, almost overwhelming scale.
This careful curation by the estate, however, brings us directly back to the central paradox of his life: control. The sources describe a fascinating conflict over narrative control.
Involving a planned Netflix documentary produced by Ezra Edelman, who won an Oscar for O.J. Made in America.
This is a textbook example of legacy preservation colliding with unfiltered biography. The documentary reportedly included controversial elements, specifically accusations of abuse from a former girlfriend.
And the estate, unhappy with what they reportedly considered a sensationalized and unflattering depiction of his life, stepped in.
And their power was definitive. The sources confirmed that in February 2025, the controversial Netflix project was officially canceled.
And simultaneously, the estate announced they would be producing a new documentary featuring exclusive content from Prince's archive.
So if the estate is prioritizing the superhuman narrative, the icon who fought the system, what elements of his vulnerability, his complexity, and the darker periods of his life are we now permanently locked out from seeing?
That's the real question. The estate's official social media posted a video of a vault door being opened, captioning it, "The vault is free."
Which in this context feels heavily loaded, doesn't it? The content might be free from the artist's control, but the narrative is very much controlled by his handlers.
Indeed. It forces a critical lens onto the entire concept of posthumous legacy. To wrap up this deep dive, let's summarize his iconic status.
He was a monumental figure, 7 Grammy Awards, 6 American Music Awards, and, uniquely, an Academy Award for Purple Rain.
He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2004, and his presence is still physically felt in Minneapolis.
In Minneapolis, he has a star on the outside mural of the legendary First Avenue nightclub. Shortly after his death, this star, originally painted silver like all the others, was repainted in gold leaf.
An enduring tribute to the artist who transcended the rest.
He was a true self-made deity, forged in the Minneapolis sound, who relentlessly blurred lines of genre, gender, and commercial expectation, only to be brought down by a vulnerability he fought so hard to conceal.
So we leave you with this thought, an observation that connects his entire life story. Prince spent decades in a furious, legally aggressive battle, even changing his name and wearing the word slave on his cheek, to gain ownership of his masters and control his own creative narrative.
He ultimately achieved that emancipation.
He did. But now, in his absence, the institution of the estate must determine what parts of his history are safe to share, managing and potentially sanitizing the very legacy he fought so hard to free. What does creative freedom truly mean if the final, definitive narrative can still be rigidly controlled by the powers that be, even after the artist is gone?
Think about that tension between the man who demanded total artistic control and the legacy that must now be managed by committee.